Hello, my name's Michael McCarthy, and in this video we're going to take a look at Zookeeper. Zookeeper is a scene management system for 3ds Max that will allow you to more easily manage and create your objects that you have in Mac. Let's just open the interface. And you can see the default interface for Zookeeper has scene objects, layers, a palette so that you can create objects, and the schematic view. In this video we're going to be taking a look at the scene objects and layer views and see how you can manage thousands of objects that you might get as well as their layers. So let's just close out this schematic view as well as the palettes, and I'm going to drag the layers up here. So I can just resize this to a size that's a little bit more palatable for my scene. And one of the nice things about Zookeeper is its ability to adjust the UI for any situation that you might be working with. Now we may just be working with Zookeeper in a very simple scene and only want to select, hide, and filter objects, in which case we can easily just tear off this piece and hide the rest, and then we just have a very simple outliner that has search capabilities. You can hide and show objects very easily, and you can filter your objects very easily as well. If you want something a little bit more than that, we'll just bring up the rest of the interface and redock this in, and now we'll start playing here. So this is a good interface for dealing with multiple objects and layers and assigning different layers and sorting your scene. So as we saw before, we can easily hide, freeze, or rename objects, and we're going to apply some to a layer. So let's just look at the basic filters here, and let's take a look at the lights. If I just hit Control and press on this filter, it'll bring up all the lights here, and you see that we have many of them. I'm just going to select all these lights, and when I do that, you can see that these lights reside on the base layer as well as a lights layer. So some of them may have gotten created in the wrong place, and an easy way for me to rectify that situation is just re-drag them all onto that lights layer, and then everybody will be situated in there. You can see that all the layers have their own colors, and all these objects have been set to use layer colors. So if I go in and change the color of the ceiling, that'll get changed, or for instance this Aeron chair here, we can go and change that color very easily. So we'll use something like blue, and you see that will update in the scene. We can go back and take a look at our cameras. So let's just go and hit Control and select the camera icon there so that we can just see the cameras in the scene. And we can see that these are all located on the base layer too. We can right click over here and say Move Selected to New Layer, and then it'll create a new layer for us over here. So I'm just going to rename that Cam for my cameras. Next, let's take a look at adding some groups, selection sets, or linkages. So if I select this guy in the scene because I know where it is, we'll see that it's named Coffee Table. And I'll just bring up the geometry filter here. All its other parts are also named Coffee Table, so if this list gets a little bit too long for me to start dealing with, I can actually add a search to that. So I'm just going to type in coffee, and you see that there's my coffee table right here. Now all these guys are part of that table right there, and I may want to add them to a group. Before I add them, I can see these aren't named quite properly, so I'm going to right click and just rename them, and I'll just click on rename. It'll rename them, and then I'm going to right click and I'm going to ask it to group these. So I'm going to name this coffee table underscore G for group. So we can see that this has been added to that group for us, and then we can easily just move that around as well as identify it in any layer or selection set. So let's just hop out of this, and we're going to take a look and see what kind of chairs we have here. Here's our Aeron chair, which is actually in this layer. So I can go into the layers and I can just hide everything else, and then there's that, and then I can set this filter to not show hidden object. And now I have this hierarchy. You can see that the axle is attached to the wheels in this case, and we want to make a simple hierarchy for this to maybe do some basic animation where a group might not be as desirable because a linked structure would probably be better. Linked structures tend to animate a little bit better, but we don't want to go wild with a rig. We're just going to create some basic sets. So we see that we have our base here and all the wheels. So we're going to take each one of these wheels, link them to the base, and then we're going to take these two pieces. So instead of grouping them with just a basic group, we're going to group them to a point helper, and then we'll get that right there. We'll just rename that, and now what we have is a pretty simple structure. We'll go to the modify panel and just adjust this size down to something a little bit smaller, and maybe make it a box. So now we have this kind of main piece which we can move over there, and if we need to do some rudimentary stuff to rotate our mesh around, then we can rotate the top and we can rotate the bottom if we just want to rotate that along with the wheels. So that's some simple linking using Zookeeper. Let's just bring all of our other objects back here. Create a couple other views. So maybe we want a view that encompasses the lights as well as the cameras, because we deal with those in a similar way. So we can add these together and right click on this and call it light cam. And if this is a filter group we use all the time, we can just keep this tab up and we'll add a new tree view and we'll just rename that curve help. And then we'll make one more. We'll set that there. We can filter our objects to anything that we want. Another nice option for navigating Zookeeper is to just dock it in a 3ds Max viewport. So I'm going to go and select this top view, and right under extended you can see the Zookeeper main window, and we'll be able to pop that in there. And we have our object tree view, curves and helpers, lights that we may want to manage, and we can just adjust any of these. One nice thing is the ability to filter by text these views. So if I just type in light, you'll see I get all the lights here in our layers, as well as let's just type in mug, see the mugs and what layer they're associated with. And then if we click on lights here, well, it'll filter through all of these guys and it'll show us only the ones that have lights. So we can go back and just choose geometry. It'll show all the geometry and what layers those are in. We can go for cameras, and it'll show, of course, those are in the cam layer, which we just point them in. So you can easily filter your layers as well as your objects themselves, which is really pretty handy. In this setup, I want to take a quick look at some of the properties and adjusting our layers as well as adding them. So we just have some base layers here. I'm going to add 3 layers really quickly. They all have different colors. I'll